So if we go back far enough, one of the dominant movers in education was the concept of behaviorism. And that's largely where we get things like measurable objectives, so that you can tell someone's learned when you can kind of measure it. There's an obvious, observable, measurable change in behavior. That's when they've learned. And then there was cognitivism that came up. And among other things, cognitivism helped us discover this idea of developmental theories, where we learned that the way a person thinks at age 12 is not the way a person thinks at age 20, or the way a person thinks at age 6 versus 12 versus 20. And this talks about the idea that learning is something that happens inside here, in our brains. And then we have constructivism that made this shift and suggested to us that learning is about meaning making. And it's not just about me taking knowledge and putting it into the brain of another person. That we each construct knowledge as we face the experiences in the world, and we have to make sense of them. And so it calls for a sense of engagement and active learning on behalf of the learner. And I'm really simplifying these right now, but I want to get right up to this fourth one. Now this fourth one is a learning theory that you might not have ever heard of before. It's called connectivism, and it comes out of Canada. George Seaman was one of a couple of people that helped sort of coin the term, and he's now at Athabasca University. And connectivism is this idea that our knowledge does not just reside in here, our knowledge resides in our connections with other people and other resources. It's connected knowledge or learning. Think about something like a pharmacist, for example. A pharmacist is serving patients, and they have all of these different prescriptions. And a pharmacist knows a great deal about drugs and psychopharmaceuticals and so forth. And yet, they may make some mistakes, and so they can really benefit from having a computer database that helps them become aware of a patient's history, and it helps them become aware of what drugs interact with each other and what might cause some danger signs. And it's the knowledge of that pharmacist combined with the knowledge that resides in, or the data that resides in that computer, that gives them the capacity to do their work with excellence. And that's a sense of sort of a connected knowledge. Or imagine a person who isn't capable of accomplishing a task on their own. It requires their knowledge being combined with the knowledge of a team in order to accomplish that task. Many of the activities and tasks in our lives today require that sort of networked and connected learning and thinking. And that's why the digital world gives us some neat possibilities. Now let me talk about the calling of the online learner for a moment. I talked about the calling of the online teacher before, but part of the calling of most of the learners that you serve involves the kinds of things I have listed up here. One, to balance different responsibilities in their lives. Family responsibilities, work responsibilities, volunteer activities within the community, as well as their formal learning. They're pursuing a degree and so forth at Union. And so the online learner has that balancing act. Now traditional learners often have that as well, but that's a distinct attribute of many of the students that we serve in the online and the remote learning kind of environment. A second is that they want to achieve certain personal goals, and the learning that they're pursuing may be one of the goals in and of itself, or they may be pursuing the learning in order to achieve another goal in their life, an aspiration to make a difference in some particular vocation or calling or something like that. Also, I would argue that part of the responsibility of the online learning is to help cultivate a learning community. And I believe pretty strongly in this. There are some environments and contexts where it's perfectly acceptable to go in and to learn on your own and to accomplish your goals, and then you're done. I would like to suggest that it's an admirable vision for an online learning university to be about more than that. To be about one where each learner takes responsibility to invest in the community of learners. So they don't just look to their own interests, but they also look to the interests of those around them. Their goal isn't just for them to learn and to grow, but to help cultivate growth and learning and well-being in the people around them. That makes for a very rewarding experience, and I would argue that it also results in the individual learner doing that. They're actually learning more in the process. Plus they're developing some important, what I would call 21st century skills for working in a connected, networked world. And then also building a learning network. So in the online world, you don't need to be limited just to the group of learners in a given course or the group of learners that are studying the same topic at the same time. There's this idea that they can be connected to people around the world. And I'm going to talk about that briefly in the next couple of slides. So how many of you are familiar with the concept of a personal learning network? Now in an online university or a remote or a distance university, there's a real affordance here. So we can certainly cultivate community within our own class environments and so forth, but we can also seek to help our learners. We can draw in people from outside of that community to help contribute and to benefit from what we were doing. What if one of our goals as students go through our graduate programs or whatever programs we're offering, what if one of our goals were to help students cultivate a robust learning network, and so that extended well beyond their time in the university? And that's a powerful value added, and that's one that will come back. People will speak very well about Union and about their time there, because it didn't just help them learn and accomplish a certain set of goals for courses, but it helped them build this network that will serve them the rest of their lives. Part of that network consists of Union people, but others, it relates to people well beyond. So the personal learning network. Now this is one that you've probably never heard of. I would be surprised if you've heard of it, because to the best of my knowledge, I coined the term, or the phrase. And it's taking the idea of a personal learning network, and it's flipping it, and it's now talking about a personal teaching network. Now, I heard in your presentation previously, before I started, a challenge to think about what it means to serve at Union University, and I would challenge you to think about maybe embracing the role of a personal teaching network, that you can contribute even well beyond what you teach by just the way that you invest in sort of your calling of teaching. So a personal teaching network is more than just teaching classes. It's getting involved, and it's sort of a citizenship, but think of it as digital citizenship. It's saying, what are my gifts and abilities? What do I have to offer to the world? And if you have a sense of teaching, if you're teaching, then you must have at least a little sense that part of your calling and part of your vocation is about teaching. So what are ways that you can contribute? And I would argue that teaching is about much more than earning a paycheck. It's about much more than just teaching a formal class. But many of the things on this list here are things that you can do as part of a formal learning experience. Yes, absolutely. I heard the statement down here about how it incorporates aspects of the Boyer model of faculty scholarship, especially service. But it also has different elements as well. So you could call this a form of digital scholarship. So if we just go down the list, I won't point to all of these. By the way, this presentation is going to be available to you. I actually have it in SlideShare, which is the website. So there might be a place where it's being shared, but I'm going to put a link to it right here in the chat. And you can actually download or view or use or reuse any of this presentation however you see fit.